Hello, and welcome to another exciting demonstration of xACTION, the bridge between xAPI and enterprise systems. I'm your host, Art Werkenthin. Today we're going to be looking at xACTION integrating with the live resume system using a REST API. This is an example screen from the live resume system. It's a small system we built, small database that allows display of current information that can be updated via REST APIs. So there's an API to add an entry to one of the sections on the page. You can update existing entries. You can delete entries. For this demonstration, we want to use xAPI statements to update the resume system. For example, if I acquire new skills that are recorded with xAPI statements, I would like to have them automatically added to the skills section of this resume. But the live resume system doesn't speak xAPI. That's where xACTION comes in. xACTION is going to be the bridge between xAPI statements and the live resume system's REST APIs. For example, suppose it takes three things to determine that someone has a new skill or competency. A student completes training, a student passes an exam, then finally the student demonstrates the new skill to a qualified assessor. So over time, three statements are sent to xACTION, possibly from different sources or learning record stores. xACTION will then use its pattern matching engine to match those statements up with rules defined in the system. When all three items are met, xACTION will make an outbound REST API call to the live resume system in order to add the skill. Now, let's take a look at a demonstration of how we did this with xACTION. So, I've logged into xACTION and gone to the services option. The first thing I want to do is I want to create a service that will send outbound REST calls to the live resume system. So I've done that here. And then let's go look at setting up properties that we want to default when this service is used. The resume service expects a JSON payload that includes properties for the particular endpoint that you're going to call. I've gone ahead and created all of the potential properties for the add, the update, and the delete methods that are associated with the resume service so that I won't have to key them again later depending upon which endpoint I'm actually calling. And I can just inactivate the ones that are not used. Now all of these I've checked as auto add as well. That means when I create an outbound action going to the resume service, these will all be added to the properties of the outbound service, and I can edit them there so that I'm just using the ones that I need. At this point, I've jumped over to the triggers menu option in xACTION, and I've created a new trigger called resume add skill. So the next thing that we want to do is add rules to this particular trigger that will match the incoming statements. I'm going to use the new import feature of xACTION to import rules. So let's take a look at the file that we're going to be importing. We're going to use the new import feature of xACTION to import this JSON file. Now this JSON file can be a single xAPI statement that you want to create a rule from, or it can be an array of as many statements as you want. In this case, it's an array, and I have three statements. You might recall earlier in this presentation, said there were going to be three things we needed to do in order to get a new skill created. We needed to complete a course, and that's this first statement up here, and I've identified all the important parts that I need created in a rule. The second statement is we need to finish a test, and that's what this second statement is. It uses a terminated verb. I found this in a profile that was in the profile server that ADL has out there. So I decided to go ahead and follow that profile. So we're completing an assessment. And then the third thing that we're doing is that an assessor is evaluating the skills and ensuring that the person has successfully completed the skill and is competent, I guess, in that skill. So that's an assertion. And then we identify information in extensions about what the object was. These are things that xACTION will use to create the entry in the resume system. So those are going to be parameters in the outbound call. Back over here in xACTION, we'll take a look at importing those statements to make rules. So I'm going to view the rules for the new trigger that I created and choose the import button. And I've already selected the file statementsonly.json, which is for the file we were looking at. There's a lot of options you have about what to import. You can turn things on and off. The extensions have several options. You can import the extension with the value or without the value. Without the value, it'll just bring in the IRI and not put a value in the database to match. If you import with values, it will import both the IRI and the value becomes part of the rule that must be matched, or you cannot export extensions. I'm just going to leave all these as the default, and I get my 3 rules created. Now, you'll notice that the rule names are not very useful because statements don't have names as part of the xAPI spec. So we'll just go ahead and change those to something a little bit more meaningful. So this is the completed verb. So this is where they're completing the class or the course. Change that so it's more meaningful. I will change this. This is the terminated. So this is the exam. And the last one will be the assertion or the demonstration to an assessor. Now, if I look at this last one, it actually has extensions that were imported as well. Now here, xACTION has said that there was an extension called evidence. It gave it the name evidence just by splitting up the IRI and grabbing the RISC piece of it. That's probably could be made a little bit more easy to read. So I'm going to do that with all of these entries. So now we have all of our extensions created, all of our rules created, and we're ready to create outbound actions when all of these rules are met. So at this point, I'll go back to the main trigger grid, and I want to add actions for my new trigger. I'll call this add skill to live resume. The request type will be a post, and we're going to use that service that we looked at earlier called resume. But I need to go to a specific endpoint to add an entry, and I'll save that. The next thing to take a look at is the properties that will be in our outbound call. And a lot of them are already there, or actually all of them are already there because we added them to the service and we said auto add them whenever we create an outbound action. What isn't here is what the values are supposed to be, so we'll set those now. For the email, I want to use the actor's mailbox, so I'll choose that from the actor properties list as a token and go ahead and tell the system that that will be a string. String is the default, but I just like to set those values just to avoid defaults and what if they change in the future. For the end date, I'm going to use the last timestamp. So once all 3 statements are coming in, the person has achieved the competency when all 3 things have been done. So I'm going to choose the timestamp of the very last statement that came in as my token and tell the system that that is a date. For the entry date, this was actually an extension on the object. So our statement that had extension was the asserted competency statement or the asserted competency rule, and it had an end date. So I'll choose that. Again, tell the system that it's a date. Entry ID was also an extension on the last statement that came in, so we can find that here. And it is a string when we call the outbound service. The entry value was an object extension, or an object description actually, on the statement coming in. So I'll just pull that from the last statement, and it is also a string. The person name will be the actor's name, string. And finally, what is the name of the section in the resume system that we want to add the skills to? And the answer to that is just a string. hard-coded skills. The resume system actually has the ability to display additional text and an additional label for an entry. So I'm going to go ahead and add those in now. So the additional text came in on the assertion statement. So I'll go find that, and it is evidence. So I'll save that. And then I want to put in a label for that. And that's a property called additional text label, and that will just be hard-coded. I'm going to italicize it. Evidence. Okay, spelled that right. Good. Okay, now we're all set up to call the live resume system and add an entry. So let's go do that. I built a tool a while back that will send statements to xACTION just so I can very easily test things. And so this tool is now displaying that JSON file that we used to import the rules earlier, and it will substitute these two properties at the top, the mailbox and the name, with the values in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and send those statements now. And all three statements were sent. So now, after giving xACTION a second or so to process the statements that came in, I've jumped over to the live resume system and refreshed the screen, and you can see our new entry. A new competency has been created and given the additional text of evidence. So that concludes our little demonstration. I hope you have enjoyed seeing xACTION in action. And as always, if you have any questions or comments or need some assistance getting set up in xACTION, please feel free to contact us. We look forward to talking to you. Thank you very much.